Let's talk a little bit about quoting and paraphrasing, since you'll be doing both in your essay. First of all, what is a quote? In case you're not sure, a quote is the exact words of someone. And you use quotation marks to show that that's exactly what someone said. A paraphrase is a little bit different. A paraphrase are the same ideas that someone said or wrote, but you put it into different language. You put it into your own words instead of using exactly the same words that were in the original. So why do we need to use quotes and paraphrases? Well, we need to use quotes and paraphrases because we're not an expert on everything. We don't know everything, and we don't have personal examples for everything. So a lot of times we use quotes and paraphrases to back up our arguments. Also, we use quotes and paraphrases to give our arguments more credibility. If we can cite an expert about our topic, then that's going to kind of back up our argument a little bit more with more credibility. So I want you to think about some of these statements and think about whether or not this would apply to a quote or to a paraphrase. So use the same words as the original article. That would be a quote. Use your own words. That would be a paraphrase. Use quotation marks. That would be a quote. Give credit to or cite your source. That's actually both. That is a quote and a paraphrase. You have to cite your source no matter if you're using the same words as the original or your own words. Just to give you an example of how important this is, these are two speeches. One is by Melania Trump from her RNC speech in 2016, and one is by Michelle Obama from her DNC speech in 2008. Take a look at some of these highlighted passages. Values that you work hard for what you want in life, that your word is your bond, and you do what you say and keep your promise that you treat people with respect. Look at Michelle Obama's speech. That you work hard for what you want in life, that your word is your bond, and you do what you say you're going to do, that you treat people with dignity and respect. Now, while they're not word for word, they're pretty close. And if you look at the next passage, those are also very, very similar. This became a problem because a lot of people noticed the two speeches were similar. It was very embarrassing for the campaign in 2016 of the Trumps, and they had to issue apologies. What's more is that they could have potentially faced legal action for this as well. Now, it didn't come to that in 2016, but that was a possibility. So, plagiarism, which is what you see here, happens all the time, unfortunately. And it can lead to some pretty serious consequences: embarrassment, legal action. There can be academic consequences like expulsion or suspension, failure of assignments or failure of courses. So this is pretty serious, and paraphrasing and quotes and citation can help you to avoid this problem. So here are some steps to quoting and paraphrasing. Step 1. Of course, read articles. Find support or disagreement for your article. Step 2. Start with a signal phrase. When you find a quote or that you want to use, or some information that you want to paraphrase, you have to make sure that your reader knows that this is what somebody else said. So you can use someone's last name to introduce their argument. For example, Smith stated that, and then you paraphrase what they said. Or Smith said, quote, and you can give their exact words. You could also do something more generally. An expert on plagiarism argues that. Or you can use this phrase, according to Smith, quote, and then give the direct quotation. You can also do something called a parenthetical citation. which is where you don't necessarily introduce the author, but you put their information at the end. So here you can see the quote, when negative consequences are imposed on a behavior, they will produce a reduction of that particular response. Pink, 2009, page 52. So this parenthetical citation, and you're going to learn more about parenthetical citations, or they're also called in-text citations later on. But here we know the author is Pink, and that information is going to help us locate who exactly the author is and what article this came from when we look at our works cited page. Which of these would not be a good example of an effective signal phrase? According to Jones, there is a quote that says, Jones stated, or Jones' argument is that. If you said number 2, you are correct. That's not a good signal phrase because it doesn't really tell us anything about who the author is or why we should pay attention to this information. Why is this important information? Step 3 is to include an internal citation. If you use a signal phrase, then you're just simply going to put the year after the author's name. If you don't use a signal phrase and you just use a parenthetical citation, you're going to use the author's last name and the year. And then step 4 is to end with a complete citation. This comes at the end of your essay, and it's called a works cited page. You're going to learn a little bit more about this later on when you're reading information about MLA citation. So I just want to end with the importance of citation, why it's important, okay? A while back, my friend made some really good baked zucchini chips, and I wanted to repeat what she had done. I wanted to try it on my own. It was really good, and I wanted to figure out how to do it for myself. So my friend gave me the recipe, and I was able to follow the recipe and nailed it. Created some really delicious zucchini chips on my own. So citing sources is similar to following a recipe or a formula. The work can be reproduced and verified, right? I was able to reproduce the zucchini chips and verify that they still tasted really good. The system makes it easier over time. The more that you cook and follow recipes, the easier it gets. And it's the same thing with citation and quoting and paraphrase. The more you do it, the easier it becomes. You become more familiar with it, and it becomes much simpler. Writers can also enter into an academic dialogue. When readers and writers can share sources and share information, they can learn more about things that are interesting to them. They can find out more information and have a broader, more interesting, more evidence-based discussion. Academic work also requires precision. In academics, you can't just say whatever you want. You have to back it up with evidence. And so citing sources is a way for you to do this and to be precise with your information. If you do have any questions about quoting or paraphrase, you can post to the discussion board. Otherwise, there's a lot of material for you to review about both citation and paraphrase.